Hi guys, welcome to Westminster. Michael Heaver here, and we've got a very, very special guest today. Henry Bolton, the new leader of UKIP, is going to be taking your questions. Lots of you have already submitted questions on Facebook and Twitter. Please jump in, please give us your comments here on this Facebook Live, and we'll get through as many as we can. But Henry, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
You're welcome. Fine, yeah, very good.
Just a general, we have a question here from Colin Cherry, and he's basically saying, where did you spring from? Can you give us a bit of background to people that aren't familiar with you, what you're about?
Yeah,
Just a bit of background.
I'm an ex-soldier, tank soldier. I was later commissioned into the infantry, territorial army. I was a police officer. I've been an international diplomat. I've worked for the United Nations as effectively a district governor in Kosovo, where I was responsible for all elements of local government, both President of the Council and Chief Executive, running the administration as well as the politics. I've done war crimes investigations. I was a crisis management advisor to the Albanian Prime Minister. I was Chief of Operations for ceasefire monitoring in Macedonia.
It's a long list we've got.
And I've helped 14 countries to sort out their strategic border controls. So yeah, I've done a variety of things.
So, it's a solid TV, isn't it? Do you think that's going to help you in your role now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's already helping me. I've got a very broad and actually deep experience in military and national security matters, in international diplomacy and negotiating, and I think a crucial element for this job at this time is the ability to put together and lead complex organisations, to establish effective planning and budgets.
Well, UKIP is known to be somewhat of a complex organisation, so that should stand you in.
I spent the entire day talking to them, and I've had one-on-ones with all of the MEPs who are there. And next week I'm going down to Newton Abbot for a couple of days to look at what's going on down there. There's a lot of work to be done, but I need to be sure that I've got all of the facts. I know where we are now before I start designing the solutions. In terms of policies, I think the easiest way to answer that question is, first of all, we're going back to the 2015 manifesto. So forget the 2017 manifesto. The baseline is the 2015 manifesto. We've got to have a policy sort of baseline, and once I've appointed spokesmen to the various portfolios, then we will have we'll start building on that 2015 manifesto baseline.
Okay. John Webb on Twitter.
Rapidly, I would say. We've not got much time to engage on this because Brexit is still the core thing, and moving forward, it's about making sure that the government delivers Brexit first of all, it's delivered, and secondly, that it's delivered in a way that projects us forward. So, there's a timeline on that. We're supposed to be out by March 2019. So time is quite short.
We've got quite a few Brexit questions coming down the road, but I'll just ask you one firstly. John Webb on Twitter, and thanks for getting in touch, John. And by the way, guys, if you're enjoying this, please give us a thumbs up and like our page, and jump in with questions. We'll get through as many as we can. John Webb on Twitter asked, will you be fielding candidates in all constituencies in the UK at the next general election? Yes,
Jordan, that's the intention. Absolutely. We also need to get a lot better at selecting and preparing our candidates. Because in the past we've appointed candidates or selected candidates far too late, and they've almost just about had enough time to have a say in designing their leaflets, and then the election is upon them. What I want to do is I want to get candidates in place very early on, and you'll see in the next few weeks I will initiate that process. So stand by, and then we need to start the business of making sure that our candidates are fully prepared, and I intend to provide the training in public speaking. Full briefings on our party policy, the whole 9 yards. So, and it's not just at parliamentary level that we've been bad at that. We've got local government elections coming up next year. We've got to do exactly the same with them. The policy of not standing candidates.
That's over, is it?
Well, that's over. There was a rationale behind that in terms of the funding and the resources that were available, but we should never be in that situation again.
Now, Matt Jones on Twitter asked an interesting question. He said, ask Henry Bolton why he refused to refused a cap on immigration when interviewed by Nigel Farage, and if he is an establishment plant to new to UKIP. What do you say to that?
The last one first. No, absolutely not. No, I'm not an establishment plant. You can speak to anybody that I've worked with in government or in the international civil service or in the diplomatic world, and they will all tell you that I am absolutely not establishment. So no, I'm quite proud of actually standing up against establishment. The other part of the question was, sorry.
You were asked about cap on immigration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, look, I'm going to be entirely straight with you. Well, what I said in that interview also is that I wanted to see a halt in net immigration until our services are able to get on top of the situation. We understand exactly where we are and we can manage them. And of course, it's not just the rate of immigration that is putting pressure on our services. I mean, if you look at the police, it's cut by 25%, local government in some places by 50%. I mean, they're being hit from both sides, the cuts and the additional population. And we've got a security problem. We're not managing any of this well. So, and as long as we continue immigration at these rates, then we're never going to get on top of it because of all those problems. So, ideally, I'd like to bring it down. I'd like to come down to a net of zero. Now, so until we understand how we're going to go forward a lot better. The thing about a cap, if we say, look, we're going to put a cap of 20,000 on it. Well, one year we might want 10,000. The next year we might want 30,000. That might be appropriate for all manner of reasons. The other thing is it's affected not only by people coming in, but by people going out. And if you want to set a figure, then you're actually going to have to control the people going out as well as the people coming in. So I'm not comfortable. Anything that any politician says to you about a cap of a figure of 20,000,
you don't think that's credible?
100,000, it's absolutely not credible. What you've got then is you've got a politician telling you that I'm going to go for that figure, and they are never going to reach it.
Okay. Well, Lewis Jones has commented on Facebook, and again, guys, thanks very much for watching. Please give us a thumbs up and please dive in with your questions for Henry. Lewis Jones asks, what are you going to do with the Navy, Army and RAF? I know there's been a lot of fear that the defence has been radically cut back. What's your stance on that?
I think what's happening to our armed forces, and not just our armed forces, but our entire security apparatus is scandalous. We're being stripped of our capabilities. There are two elements. One is the lack of investment. And I think everybody's probably aware out there that British aircraft establishment have just said that they're planning to lay off 2,000 workers in the UK because of the slowdown in the procurement of the Typhoon fighter aircraft. We've got HMS Albion, HMS Bulwark, 2 minesweepers and 1,000 Royal Marines being cut from the Navy. Royal Marines being part of the Navy, of course. We've got, and that is a total capability loss. Our amphibious warfare capability in terms of landing troops. Now, I want to see all those cuts reversed. We need to get back up to a decent fighting strength, and I want to define that not necessarily in terms of figures, but in terms of capability. What we need to do is be able to conduct full spectrum operations independently of any other nation. And this is the second point. Theresa May has said that she's offered the European Union, and she wants the British Armed Forces, or elements of them, to be integrated with the European Union approach to common security and defence. Now, why is she doing that? It's not because she's kind of being just generous or something. It is because the government wants to be part of a pooling of resources between EU member states. In other words, we don't need so many tanks because collectively we've got lots of tanks. We don't need so many ships because collectively we've got lots of ships. Okay, so we can cut back if that makes sense to you. That's the thinking in Whitehall. Okay. Now, the problem with that, though, is that you become subordinate to EU foreign policy because their military missions are tasked by their foreign policy, and we won't be part of that going forward. Okay. So this is an appalling situation, and is another indicator that she has absolutely no intention of leaving the European Union in anything but name.
Okay. Guys, if you're enjoying this, I hear there's 600 now watching, so that's absolutely fantastic. Thanks very much. Please give us a thumbs up. Please jump in. You know, it's a new way of doing politics. Your questions direct to the new leader of UKIP, Henry Bolton. Now, we've had a lot of comments, and Lee on Twitter gave one on this subject, just to put this to bed. Lee has asked, what is the difference, in Henry's view, between UKIP and this new party that's being set up? Let's put him on the spot. So we've heard about this. One of the leadership candidates has left UKIP and is apparently setting up a new party. What's your feelings on that? Where do you stand on that?
There are two of them.
Okay.
John Rhys-Evans is setting up one as well,
yeah.
and Anne-Marie Waters. You know,
what's your message to people that may be thinking about those parties versus UKIP versus your leadership?
I've also heard, Michael, that there's a rumour going around that people who voted for Anne-Marie Waters in the leadership contest are not welcome in this party. That's absolute tosh. Anybody who believes in this party, who wants to be part of this party, is welcome, so long as they stay within the constraints of the Constitution. And the Constitution does have constraints in this area. Our own Constitution talks about the fact that we are not going to be act in any way in prejudice to any individual or group based on their religion, their ethnicity, or anything else. Anne-Marie Waters has decided herself, with no conversation with me whatsoever, to leave and set up her own party, and that's what she wants to do. Of course, she can do so. I want people to stay in this party. The objective here is to build membership, is to build unity and go forward together, because we've got shared objectives. But it's up to the individual. I'm not going to be kicking anybody out of the party because they voted for Anne-Marie Waters. That rumour out there is absolute rubbish. John Rhys-Evans has done something similar, and John set himself up. I mean, he was ready to go with his organisation even whilst we were still fighting the leadership contest, and I think that was a little disloyal, but anyway, there we go.
John Edwards on Facebook, he's asked, and you know, I think there's a lot of people out there asking this now. What is the point of UKIP now that we've left the EU, or that we're going to leave the EU? Where, you know, why should people think UKIP's still relevant?
You know, we've got to get really good at sending this message out there, because I keep getting asked this question. First of all, UKIP's really relevant because if nothing else, because we have not yet left the European Union. We're still not out of the customs union. We're still not out of the single market, and our courts and our parliament are still subordinate to, in every way, a foreign power, the ECJ and Brussels. So, you know, we fought wars to stop Napoleon doing this, and others, and you know, UKIP is the only pro-Brexit opposition party. We're 100% let's get out. Now, but it's not just about leaving the European Union. It's about getting beyond that, making sure that this country is prosperous, that it is secure, that its identity and its way of life is protected going forward. Now, the Conservative government have, we all know, a great track record of failing to plan beyond the next issue. David Cameron, now Theresa May, all she's planning on is trying to get the negotiations concluded. I don't think she cares what the outcome is, just so long as she sort of politically comes out of it in some way smelling of roses, and she doesn't seem to be doing a very good job of that. So what we need to do as a party is make absolutely sure that this country is launched forward into a good future. And
just on Brexit, Paul Joseph Watson, who a lot of people have seen his videos, his question that he said, he asked you, at what point do we start organising mass protests against the sabotage of Brexit? Do you think Brexit is being sabotaged? Could you foresee protests being organised in the future?
Yes, I can.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. How soon do you think that could be? Incoming? I'm
nodding.
You're nodding. Okay. All right. We'll leave that for. Pedro Gonzalez.
You'll hear in due time.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Stay tuned, guys. Pedro Gonzalez on Twitter has asked, are you going to start sorting out the party structure? Needs revitalising.
Yes, he's absolutely right. It needs revitalising. It needs more than revitalising. It's not fit for purpose. We can't deliver our politics if our structure is either ineffective, inefficient, or indeed, by virtue of its structure, obstructive to what we're trying to do politically. The structure is there to help us deliver politics, or should be. And so yes, and that's right at the beginning I mentioned that I'm spending this 2 weeks trying to get to the bottom of what all the issues are. And that's everything from the way that we hire people, to the way that we manage our finances, to the way that we formulate policy, to the way that we support the regions and the branches, to the way that we support our elected representatives at any level, whether they're assembly members, whether they're local councillors, or whether they're in the European Parliament. So you will see in the coming weeks changes being made to the way that we do stuff. Now, there's an obvious question about the national executive. What I'll say at this stage is that our national executive gets involved in policy, it gets involved in the executive, hiring, firing people and deciding where money's going to be spent and how and all the rest of it, and it holds itself to account. Now, this is not best practice, okay? So we're going to have to address that. I will be discussing the way forward with that with the NEC.
Okay. Matt Davies has asked on Facebook, thanks a lot for your comment, Matt. What does he think of the Lib Dems these days? Of course, you used to be sort of associated with the Lib Dems. I think you stood for them as well. How have you made that? Can you explain to people how you've gone from the Lib Dems to UKIP? We have quite a lot of questions on this.
Sure. Well, actually, I've just been saying a similar thing earlier on today. Yeah. I joined the Lib Dems not because I was a Lib Dem. Now, it might sound strange, but hear me out. When I was in Kosovo, in the job I was talking about earlier, one of the tasks that I had mandated to me by the UN Security Council was to help political parties to develop their own internal organisation and structures. Now, I'm a former soldier, former police officer. What do I know about that? In 1999, I knew nothing about that. I was interested in politics, but certainly didn't know that. And so the only way I could really find that out was actually by joining a political party. I sure wasn't going to join the Conservatives. I certainly wasn't going to join Labour. And so, kind of default down the middle. But I also believed in classical liberalism, old-fashioned liberalism.
The Gladstone sort of tradition.
Correct, yeah. But what I rapidly discovered was that the Liberal Democrats have moved on a lot from that. And there is this approach which seems to be along the lines of society owes everything to the individual, and the individual has no responsibilities towards society or the community as a whole. I mean, that's putting it sort of fairly generally, but and I think modern liberalism it has a lot to answer for in terms of the disassembling of our social structures. The other thing, I of course left the Liberal Democrats because of all of that. But I'm also, I was always Eurosceptic, and as the Liberal Democrats became more and more embedded in a culture of we've got to be part of the European Union and almost sort of federalist in that respect, that was absolutely unacceptable to me. We should also remember that Churchill was a Liberal to start with.
Well, I hope that's
great things to come,
Yeah. So Tom Collins on Twitter, he asked a very poignant question actually. Mm-hmm. Do we have to live with the threat of terrorism for the rest of our lives and the lives of our children and grandchildren? Is this threat we're now seeing here to stay for generations, do you think?
Terrorism comes from different places. We've had terrorism for hundreds, thousands of years. And indeed in the 1970s, yes, I'm that old, in the 1970s, the headlines were dominated by the atrocities of the Baader-Meinhof gang, Red Army faction and people like that. European-based terrorist groups from the extreme left. So, terrorism is terrorism as a technique to be used by people who want to undermine the state. I think that's not going to go away. The IRA, for example, as well. So terrorism has been with us for a long time. I mentioned earlier about cutting the police budget by 25%. Well, one of the first things to go there, because everybody wants to see uniforms on the streets, although we rarely do nowadays, but one of the first things to go was the backroom functions, and that included intelligence analysts. So we've lost a lot of our capability to understand what's going on in terrorist networks. The other thing, though, is, of course, we talked about immigration earlier. And if you are bringing people in from abroad, from areas where there has been combat. There are people who've got maybe experience with firearms and explosives, and a lot of them are already radicalised. So, you know, and our border systems are not capable of vetting these people. So we need to be a lot more choosy about who we let into the country in that regard. But there is a whole range of things. Simply put, I think terrorism is not going to go away, but we shouldn't just think that it's about Islamic terrorism. That's the biggest threat now, but it could also come from somewhere else. So we need to watch all of this again.
Yeah, that just ties into our question. Obviously, there's a lot of people now concerned about the threat radical Islam poses. David Murdoch on Facebook, thanks very much for your comment, David. And by the way, guys, if you're enjoying this, please give us a thumbs up. Please like the Westminster Facebook page. You can see future streams. But David Murdoch on Facebook has asked, what is your stance on radical Islam and how do we tackle it?
My stance on radical Islam is that it's our enemy. I mean, you know, quite simply put. And I've said, whilst we're not at war with any religion as a whole, we're certainly at war with anybody who is part of a jihadist movement that seeks to harm our people, our economy, our national institutions, or our way of life. Absolutely we are. So that's my position on it. How do we address it? Well, you know, we've talked about defence and we've talked about policing, and what we're doing is running down all of these capabilities that are exactly the capabilities that we need to deal with it. And I actually think we ought to, you know, in certain cases we ought to get a little bit more clever about how we take the fight to the enemy as well. Okay. There's a propaganda thing. I would like to see the downloading of jihadist material to be an offence, just the same as it is for child pornography. I think, you know, we can almost cut and paste a lot of that legislation across. I also want to see a situation where we're not radicalising people in our own country, or we're not allowing that to happen. So, hate preachers. I would like to see all imams who are preaching in this country be trained here and be licensed, be funded from here. So, in other words, not from the government, of course, but like a Church of England vicar, they should be British people. There are British Muslims here who are very loyal to Britain. I believe. I know people who've died in the service of this country who are Muslims. So, you know, I think there are people who understand our way of life. They have a different religion to Christianity, but they understand our way of life. And the problem is, if you allow an imam to come in from, I don't know, northwest Pakistan, totally different way of life, totally different culture, totally different society, no knowledge of us, and actually coming over here to spread what their view of the world is, that is harmful, and we need to put a stop to that. I want to see a stop to any Qatari or Saudi funding of our schools, and absolutely a stop to Saudi textbooks being used in our schools. This is just outrageous stuff. So there's a whole raft of things that we need to be doing. There's no one silver bullet.
Just changing gear slightly, Mike Albert on Twitter. Now, we saw that new logo. He's asking, have the Premier League sued you yet for nicking their logo? Has there been any moves from the Premier League?
No. First of all, this was done before I became leader, all the work done on this. And I have...
Do you like the logo?
Yeah, I'm okay with the logo. Yeah. I mean, I'm like a lot of people, sentimentally attached to the pound sign. We may not lose that entirely.
Oh, okay.
I've got a cunning plan.
Sounds interesting.
But anyway, this is... I'm not going to talk
sort of
through
combine the pound and the lion. Then.
Well, let's say my understanding is that a political party can register 3 symbols.
Ah, okay.
Okay. We need to think a little bit out of the box here.
Yeah.
So... but I'm not going to give any more away than that.
The pound could be on the comeback track.
It needs to come back. It's still out there.
Okay.
But no decisions made
on
that in that regard. We're not going to lose the lion. Okay. We're not going to lose the lion.
Lion's here to stay.
The lion is here to stay, and I know that whichever way you go on this, people will have a very strong opinion about it. What it really is about going forward is our identity. A lot of people identify themselves with that pound sign, and I fully get that. But going back to the Premier League, the Premier League, I'm assured that there was advice taken on whether or not there was any conflict there in terms of the copyright, and there is not. That's the advice that was given to the party. The Premier League have said that they're not entirely happy with the situation, but they're not, as far as we know, taking it any further.
No lawsuits at the moment.
There are some significant differences as far as the copyright people are concerned.
Guys, if you're enjoying this video, we've got our last few minutes, our last few questions. If you're enjoying this video, please give us a thumbs up. Please dive in. We'll try and get a few more questions before Henry has to go. But we've got an interesting one here from Rich Seal on Twitter. And I think this is a question a lot of people are going to be asking. What role will Nigel Farage have with UKIP going forward? Rich says he's a big asset, needs to be heavily involved. Is Nigel Farage going to be heavily involved under your leadership in UKIP?
I think he's already involved, isn't he? No, I mean, he's out there already.
I think people have seen him do the shows and things like that, but not so much with UKIP of recent years.
Okay, Nigel and I have had a discussion. We've had a couple of discussions where we've touched on this. He's quite busy at the moment. I'm quite busy at the moment. We will have further conversations about his role going forward. Yes, Nigel is a strong presence in the party. He is UKIP. He is, of course, he's got a role going forward. But exactly what that's going to be going forward, you'll have to watch this space.
Rowan Messingham.
Not this space. I'm occupying this space. He's not the leader. I'm the leader.
He's the leader. Just to make it clear. Rowan Messingham on Facebook asks, has the time come to leave the EU without a deal? Obviously, I know there's a lot of people on Westminster who are on our streams who basically want to walk away now. They're sick and tired of it. What's your view on that? Yeah,
I mean, we have to prepare a bit first. I mean, that's the practicality. And out now means, now is a process of planning and preparation to get out. And absolutely, that should have started on the 24th of June 2016. That planning and preparation. We should be in a position now to say to Brussels, you know what, we've had enough of this. This is clearly going nowhere. We're going. But that does require a little bit of planning and preparation. So my main effort there is to ensure that the government is actually putting in place the necessary resources so that we can actually get out now. So absolutely, we need to be prepared to go. The other thing is, of course, when we're not planning or preparing to leave the European Union, what message does that send to Brussels? It just sends the message that actually we're not really interested in going. All the wrong messaging is being sent out of Downing Street, Whitehall, the Foreign Office, and so on.
Just a final question, and guys, thanks very much for joining us. Do give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. But the final question is going to come from Jason Richards. And there's a lot of people asking, Henry, are you going to sell out the UKIP voters? Are you going to go politically correct? Are we going to see UKIP sticking to its radical traditions under you? Can you reassure people that's going to be the case?
I absolutely. I mean, I can tell you that that's not going to be the case. I'm not going to sell out the party. I'm not. I didn't come into this in order to just kind of sit here. And if people look into my background a bit, everything that I've done, I've gone into it to make a concrete difference because I've been extremely unhappy with the status quo, what's been going on at that time. Okay, I'm unhappy with the situation now. There's no movement from government on Brexit. There's no movement in making sure that this country is a secure and optimistic and confident, prosperous nation going forward. There's no work being done on any of that. Somebody needs to demonstrate some leadership in this country. And it's not going to be the Conservatives, and it's certainly not going to be Labour. It's going to be us.
There you have it, guys. Henry Bolton, you've submitted your questions, you've heard what he's got to say. Hopefully we'll do this again sometime. But Henry Bolton, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us. Please give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and we'll catch you soon.